It is time to begin. All right, I want to talk about a couple of current events, just some news items. You have all probably seen them. I'm not a big news junkie anymore. I go through phases where I am a news junkie and I watch it, and then I go through phases, and I've done this like most of my life, where I just have to step away, from it. So I just randomly looked at a few news stories. One was really interesting. I thought it caught my eye. A few weeks ago, we know that the leaders of the NAACP came to Utah. Church gave them a donation. They met with the prophet and other apostles. They actually spoke in a sacrament meeting, some of them. So that was all interesting. Well, there was a leader earlier this week, of the NAACP, I believe in Virginia. You can look it up yourself. I'm not going to give you a reference or a link to it. But she basically stated that if you do not go along with CRT and other social justice issues, but CRT was specific, then you can die. This woman was also a representative of the local PTA, in addition to being a leader of the NAACP. And the PTA had kind of distanced themselves from her statement and said, she went too far. But we haven't heard anything from the NAACP on this. So as we look at this critical race theory being taught in schools, in our universities, and infiltrating the churches, not just the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, although it has, but other churches. We talk about it at BYU. Quick Media is very focused and very educated on the CRT. This is an interesting dynamic to it, that a leader in the NAACP basically says if you do not embrace CRT, you can die. Yeah, I don't think we should take those things lightly and go, well, it's just pretty much anytime there is an attack on freedom, and there is this ideology that is being forced and pushed. Just listen to what they say. They tell you what the end game is in this. They tell you. You don't have to go, gosh, I wonder what they mean by that. They tell you. The government tells you. And speaking of the United States government, I know, there's listeners here that aren't living in this in the country of the United States where this is being broadcast from, but the president's press secretary said that that government officials, leaders in the government, in the administration, in the Biden administration, have contacted all the social media, and anytime there is what they classify as misinformation about the jab and the substance in the jab, if anything is negative, it's misinformation. And when one social media screens that and eliminates somebody saying that, then they all should. Folks, this is scary stuff. First off, you have a government telling you what's misinformation and what's not, instead of you being able to look at the facts and decide for yourself. And then they in turn get with not just social media, but media in general, and squelch everything. This is intense stuff. this is a really good indication of what we're dealing with the jab, in how they're attacking this. They feel threatened so much that if it's brought up, if it's talked about, you're going to be shut down. Wow. We talked about having our control, you don't own me, and control on the last video. This is just another demonstration of that. And they're right out front. They're right out front talking about it. They're not, hiding behind the curtain like the Wizard of Oz. They're coming out forward and saying, we are going after those. And they've actually identified, I think they said 7 or 9 individuals that they feel like are pushing misinformation, and they're going to go after them and then go from there. So you're going to see the censorship just continue on whatever issue the government decides they want to push. If there's anything against that, they will immediately go to their friends in the social media giants, Twitter, Google, which is YouTube, all the others, and they'll just Facebook, Zuckerberg, they'll go to all them, and they'll all be coordinated. The media basically is already there. So yeah, interesting times that way. The other thing I wanted to talk about, and this will get some people a little uptight, I get that, but I think it's something to look at. In the Deseret News, and I don't want to get too specific, you can look it up, but there was a mission president that passed away, and they said that his cause of death was COVID. Been a mission president for a year, and he'd been battling COVID for about 2 months. And I believe he was from Argentina and serving in somewhere else, I think in South America, but I can't remember. So I read the article, I read it all, but you can read it. Just Google it, mission president passing away in Deseret News, and you'll read it. Do a little research. Here's some thoughts. Okay, so now if he started a year ago, obviously the vaccine wasn't available a year ago. What I would like to know is if he received that vaccine sometime before he got COVID and the first year, like when the vaccine was available, did he get it, or did he maintain being a mission president and missionaries coming to him from another country being required to have the vaccine, but he as a mission president didn't get the vaccine? So I think we need to hear more of what's going on. This article was all the items were given to them by Public Affairs, and I personally feel like they spin everything. They spin it. So it's an interesting thing, because if he did get the vaccine prior to him getting COVID, then the vaccine didn't work. If he didn't get the vaccine and he's a functioning mission president, and then why is everyone else required to get the vaccine? And maybe it's not available to him. I don't know. I don't know all the details, but I do think it's interesting. Now, is there a chance that he actually died from the vaccine and not from COVID? Did he get the vaccine and then immediately become ill? It says that he died of cardiac arrest. Now, that's very interesting. And he actually died in Florida. So he was taken from his mission and brought to Florida, I guess, for treatment. But a lot of unanswered questions there. But it was easy to just say he died of COVID. we're very, it seems like we're very open about, hey, you got to get the vaccine, got to get the vaccine, got to get the vaccine. And then when we choose not to get the jab, then all of a sudden the bells and whistles go off. It's just so you guys see what I'm getting at here. So I'd like to, personally, if somebody can find out that information, I would love to hear about this. The group here of cows is getting a little bit bigger, and people have feelers out there. And if you can find out some more information on this, I think it would be very enlightening to find out if all mission presidents are required, no matter where they are, required to get the vaccine, and when they got that vaccine, and then, you know, see where it goes from there. So here's another thing that's interesting, how you'll notice this. I just noticed this the other day, where those that are opposed to the jab are being lumped into, they're against all other jabs or vaccines. And that's interesting because I would say most people are not necessarily opposed to vaccines, but may have questions about the jab, because it truly isn't a vaccine in the sense that there are elements of the virus in the jab. That is really the definition. I'm not a medical person, but from what I've read, that's really the definition of a vaccine, is having an amount or a type of the virus that you're fighting, so that your body, and injected in, so that your body can build up the immunities. And this isn't that. This latest thing, jab, isn't that. And so what they do, what the media, the government, what they do is, instead of saying the jab, the specific one that people have questions on, they now just say plural vaccines, period. So then you're including, you know, all the ones that we all got when we were kids, if you're my age and you're mid-60s. And, you know, I probably have mentioned this before, I probably had every vaccine that came along. You know, it's just what happened. So it's just interesting how they're lumping that in now, the current jab, you know, into that. Interesting, because I think there's a big segment of people that have had previous vaccines and really have no major issues with that, but have a question on this one, and now we're all just lumped together. Now there is a segment of, when we presided over a mission, we had a few missionaries, I would say over the 3 years we had, I don't know, maybe 10, I don't know. I'm just taking a guess. Missionaries that had not had any vaccinations, and they came from families that really, you know, didn't like that. So when it came to you know, the flu season and the flu shot and all that, it was like, And I was like, cool, fine. I don't really care. And my guess is that's why their missions were stateside, because the vaccine thing has been in place for quite some time, with missionaries going overseas, that if you're from a family or you're an individual yourself that just doesn't want and never has had any vaccines, you'll probably go stateside. Not probably, you will. If you're from the States, you'll stay in your own country. That's a better way to say it. And that's been in effect for a long time. So adding this newest version of things, the condition, that stays the same. But it is a different, it's a different animal, right? It's a different animal. And I think there are a lot more people questioning this latest, the jab, the latest one versus the previous ones. There's a small segment, like I said, out of, I don't know how many missionaries we had, 500 maybe in 3 years. I can't remember. You know, some you get that were with the previous mission president and his wife, and then you have them for part of the time, and then you have a segment where, you know, they were with you the whole time, and then you have the last segment where they're with you part of the time and with the new mission president. So how you figure all that out, I don't know, but out of all that 3 years, I would say maybe a dozen, 10, I don't know, that didn't have any. Now, it'd be interesting to see how many missionaries are now being called that are saying no to the latest jab, right? And I bet you it's way higher than those that were against having you know, the previous vaccines that are legit vaccines. So it's an interesting question, particularly about this mission president. And I don't, you know, I'm sensitive to the fact that the brother died while serving. He has a wife and children and probably grandchildren. And I'm not making light of that, but it would be interesting to hear how, because typically, it's interesting how we focus on the type of death. If it's corona, that's emphasized big time. If it's something else, you know, it's complications of something. And the fact that he died of cardiac arrest is very interesting to me. That's the actual cause. So anyway, those are some current things that are going on. We had the NAACP lady, we had the mission president passing away, and we had the president's press secretary announcing the teaming up with the social media giants to squelch anything that opposes the government stand on the current situation with the jab. Okay, let's talk some good stuff now about the scriptures. So we have section 77 that we've been discussing. It's so cool. A Q&A with God and about the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation to me is so fascinating because it's mentioned in the Book of Mormon in the sense that Nephi has basically, from what we're understanding, the same vision, but he's told he can't write it, that Christ is reserving that for his servant John, that will be born, you know, like 600 years later, and he gets this vision and he gets to write it down. Joseph Smith later on in life said that this is just like pure, simple, and it's there. Probably because of how it wasn't messed with translation, because they didn't understand, the translators didn't understand it, so they just wrote it the way it was. That's what a lot of people think, and I'm one of them. So that's how it was maintained in its purity. There are a couple of really interesting things. So on this channel, we've talked a lot about, you know, is this are we in the sixth seal? Is the seventh seal opened? And one of the questions is really interesting because it says, oh boy, I switched around. I think it says, what is chapter 9? And well, here, let me find it here real quick. So what are we to understand? Or excuse me, verse 13 in section 77. When are the things to be accomplished which are written in chapter 9? Yeah, chapter 9 of Revelation. So, and the answer is, we are to understand that they are, they are to be accomplished after the opening of the seventh seal, before the coming of the Lord. So if we studied chapter 9 of Revelation, that comes after the opening of the seventh seal. Do we see anything in there that's happened? I'm not going to say. I frankly don't know. My feeling is we typically don't recognize something being fulfilled, or that it's going to be fulfilled, until after. And sometimes it's quite a bit after. And then we look backwards and go, wow, So, yeah, I wish I had an answer. We all study it. I don't know. We've talked about this before. The church website has on there what was in Mormon doctrine, Bruce R. McConkie, and basically it's just 1,000 years, boom, boom, boom. So around the year 2000 would be the opening of the seventh seal, because you have 4,000 years prior, and then 2,000 years after. And so around the year 2000 would be the end of the sixth seal and the opening of the seventh, around, right? So, who really knows? I don't know. But along with the seventh seal and the opening of the seventh seal, you have the half hour of silence. And this is really interesting, the half hour of silence. There's so many, many individuals have calculated that to be, 21 something years, or 20 point something years, where you take a half hour is, when you take one day is like 1,000 years to the Lord, and you calculate it all, and it's, or an hour to the Lord is 1,000 of our years, sorry. And then you calculate that, and a half hour is 20 some odd years. And if you go, some feel like it was the dedication of perhaps the Palmyra, perhaps the Nauvoo temple. Some might say it was the Rome temple, that those were indications of the opening of the seal. To me, things overlap. So in other words, you could have things from the sixth seal also be part of, that are continuing, that, so it's not like it's just an abrupt end of the sixth seal and then the opening of the seventh seal, that there could be overlapping. Okay, that's kind of how I've thought of things. Now, but it is interesting that Joseph Smith was fascinated and interested in specific questions about the book of Revelation and what John was seeing. It's the Church of the Firstborn is mentioned in there. The last question, which I really love, is about what are we to understand? This is verse 15. What are we to understand by the two witnesses in the 11th chapter of Revelation? And there's quite a few verses that talk about these two witnesses. I think it's Zechariah that refers to them as the candlesticks, or the olive trees or branches, something like that. And it's also mentioned in Isaiah, which in turn is requoted in, I think it's First Nephi. So we get the idea, the raised up to the Jewish nation, right? The answer is they are two prophets that are to be raised up to the Jewish nation in the last days, and at the time of the restoration. So this is interesting. Now, some have felt like Joseph and Hiram were either a type of these witnesses, or that they were the witnesses. Personally, I don't feel like that fits what we read in the book of Revelation in chapter 11. But, you know, it is interesting. 2 witnesses. There are 2 prophets that are to be raised up unto the Jewish nation in the last days, which we are in the last days, at the time of the restoration. And if you look up the footnote restoration, it's the last days restoration of the gospel. That's the topical guide. So typically we think of from the first vision on, right? Now, President Nelson has said the restoration is continuing. So I would think this could be, and my personal feeling is that this is something in the future. That's just my feeling. And to prophesy to the Jews after they are gathered and have built the city of Jerusalem in the land of their fathers. This is why I don't think it's the prophet Joseph and his brother Hiram as those witnesses, because that hadn't happened until 1948 and then 67 and then it's continuing. But this is specific to Jerusalem and the Jews. Now, okay, I have a thought, and I've expressed this before, that perhaps it's an Old Testament prophet that had been translated or quickened or caught up, which Elijah's one of those, and he likes to yield a sword. And I could see him, he loved to kill the priests of Baal. And I could see him being one of those. And I know what people are thinking. I also think that the other one could be John himself as a translated being. Now, transfigured, translated, 2 different things. Transfigured is more of a temporary, just for a specific event to be changed or to be able to withstand the presence of God or Christ. I believe Joseph Smith was transfigured in the sacred grove, but not translated. That's just my opinion, right? But I think there's pretty good evidence that the Mount of Transfiguration, where Peter, James, and John saw what they saw and witnessed what they witnessed, they were transfigured, not translated at that time, right? The 3 Nephites, or the 3 disciples, I'd like to call them, were translated, quickened, caught up, but not transfigured. They were translated, and so was John, and so was Elijah. Sorry. Now, some will say, well, it says they're going to die, and you can't kill a translated being, which is true. Now, death is an interesting phrase. Their bodies will lay in the street, and they'll be dead, and then they'll be resurrected. I personally think that could still apply, because in essence, they are dead. They're laying there. But to accomplish the things they need to do before that is pretty miraculous. And it might take a translated body to perform what they were going to do. And then their bodies merely lay in the street. Kind of like, it was Lazarus, dead? Of course he was, but he was brought back to life. So death is relative. It really is. It's relative. These translated beings for 3 days could be dead in a sense. But then resurrected and not translated anymore, and resurrected, these 2 prophets. Raised to the Jewish nation. Now, Bruce R. McConkie, so we have some really interesting thoughts in the church, and most of them stem from concerning this time period and last days and all the things. I think the most influential was Joseph Fielding Smith, his Doctrines of Salvation, that was edited and compiled really by Bruce R. McConkie. And then Bruce R. McConkie came with Mormon doctrine, and then I'm looking over the Promised Messiah, the Mortal Messiah, and the Millennial Messiah series of books. and their thoughts are really similar, Joseph Fielding and Broussard. And they feel like, and Broussard particularly, that the two witnesses will be members of the Quorum of the 12 or First Presidency of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So, very well could be. Some say his name will be David, and we have two individual apostles whose first names are David right now. And so there's been that thought or idea. Personally, this is just me personally, I don't think they'll be members of the Quorum of the 12 or the First Presidency. I think they will be Jewish, not just raised to the Jewish nation, but they will be of that nation. The other interesting part is that Elijah was in the northern kingdom, and the 10 tribes rejected him as a prophet, and John, more from Jerusalem and that area, who knows, could be a representation of the southern kingdom, and that comes together. I don't know. But it is interesting to think about, and it is interesting that Joseph Smith had that question and got that answer. It'll come at a time when there's major war and destruction happening in Jerusalem, and these two prophets will be part of that, or these two witnesses. So I'm not helping anything here. I'm just throwing some things out there. I'm not answering any questions. I don't frankly know. I've told many people as they requote, Brigham Young or Joseph Fielding Smith or Broussard McConkie or somebody else, I'll quote them and I'll say, you know what, you'd be way better off to go with what an apostle or a prophet says than a guy like me. And I really believe that. But I also believe that their words in these cases, like in the Doctrines of Salvation of Joseph Fielding Smith, Mormon doctrine, their opinions of these good brethren. And I'm so grateful that they put them out. I mean, it's something to put it out in words and give your thoughts, because then people can attack you, because you're willing to do it. So I revere these men who have done this. And even though I might come up with a different conclusion, I still just think, wow, they at least, put it out there and gave their opinion on it. And I think it's wonderful. But I do think it is just an opinion. It's not scripture. It's not scripture. It's just not scripture. So I don't feel like I'm going against anybody by having a different opinion of how that would come about. The other one is that who's going to build that third temple in Jerusalem? And Broussard McConkie says it has to be done by the proper priesthood, and it's the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that will oversee that. And I totally disagree with that. And there's Wilford Woodruff said that the Jews will build that temple. So even within our church, there's opposing views, and that's great. That's fine. It's just their thoughts. It's their ideas, and it's their understanding, and then they put it out there. So and that's what I'm doing. But man, sometimes you get put under attack because you say something that's different, from what some of the brethren might have said. But I think every Latter-day Saint has an opportunity to have an opinion on the scriptures and how we, understand them. But then I think we need to be careful to not take everything that the brethren say as scripture. So let's study the scriptures, and let's just, not get too caught up in I'm right and you're wrong, or they're right and you're wrong, and all that kind of stuff. But just, oh, okay. And that's a different way to look at it. So that's where we are. Some current events, just some interesting things about the book of Revelation. Joseph Smith, he is the prophet of the last dispensation. He is the prophet. So everything runs through him, and President Nelson has said so. So anyway, that's it. Hope you guys have a great weekend and Sabbath day, and we'll regroup and hit it hard again next week. I have some other thoughts. Tomorrow night, I'm going to be with Troy Abels, the last dispensation, and we're going to be with Kwaku again, and we're going to be talking about CRT at BYU. We're going to be talking about some other things, and Troy will have it on. He's going to be hosting it. I'll be a guest, so it will be on his show, but he'll give it to me, and I'll post it on mine too. I love Troy. He's the most genuine guy. I love his program, and Last Dispensation YouTube channel. He's good guy. Next week, Troy will have, I can't remember his name, sorry, but Quick Media. He'll have him on and interview him. I may or may not be on that one. We'll see. But that'll be interesting. He's done a lot of research on the CRT and everything else. So that'll be good. So there's just kind of a few of the things coming up. I'm not a super fan of, I used to be, of JP, the red-haired, kind of long red-haired guy, and muscular. He's very funny. Can get a little crude sometimes, but he has a video on the door-to-door approach of the Biden administration to see if you've had the jab. If you want to look it up, is it JP Spears, something like that? If you want to look that up, there's one bleeped word in there that it's a little bit, but if you want a good laugh, to see how someone would respond to a representative of the Biden administration coming to your door to find out why you haven't had the jab. It's pretty comical. So I throw that out there too. I had thought about putting the link there, but I changed my mind on my channel, so you can look it up. Okay, that's it. You guys are awesome. I don't care what everyone says about you. I think you're awesome. See you later. Bye.